Hello and welcome to All Top 5s. This is a subject that people get very passionate about, and with good reason. Landing on the moon is hailed as one of science's greatest achievements. So when there are claims that the whole effort was faked, people take sides and defend these positions very strongly. Here are the top 5 pieces of supposed proof that the moon landings were faked. Number 5. Photography. One large part of the arsenals of conspiracy theorists is the photographs sent back from the moon landings. This is understandable as it's some of the only direct pieces of hard evidence that NASA has given us, so it's what people tend to pick apart. A common claim by conspiracists is that almost no photographs taken from the moon landing missions have any stars showing in the sky. Indeed, the sky is simply black, where you'd expect a tapestry of stars. NASA reasonably states that these landings have only ever occurred on the daytime side of the moon. Otherwise, if it was the nighttime side, it would be too dark to see anything. Much like on Earth, the daylight from the sun way outshines any stars in the sky. The only reason the sky is black rather than blue on the moon is because it has no atmosphere, so it looks like starless night despite the sun shining brightly. It's actually the same as many other near-space photos. Another point made against the photographs released is that they appear to have been lit by spotlights, as if it was all on a studio set rather than the moon. NASA explains that this is down to post-production. See this one image, for example. The original unedited image of Buzz Aldrin on the moon is a lot flatter in terms of lighting without the spotlight effect. The widely distributed version, however, has had the contrast tweaked like any professionally released photo would be before being released to news outlets. NASA also notes that direct sunlight onto a white spacesuit against a shady or dark background can help produce a spotlight effect too. One more question, but not the last, asked by hoax theorists is who filmed Neil Armstrong in that famous scene of him being the first to step on the moon? The answer is simple. Of course there wasn't a person or a television camera on the moon first filming him. The camera was attached to the lunar module, activated by Armstrong as he got to the steps. This had been designed especially so that hundreds of millions of people could witness the groundbreaking achievement live.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
There are many more questions regarding photographs of the landings, but NASA has very reasonable explanations for each and every one. Number 4. Transmission delays. A strange one, this, but it often comes up. The distance between the moon and the Earth is great at 400,000 kilometers, and that means that radio communications moving at the speed of light, which is 300,000 kilometers per second, should take about 2.5 seconds in perfect conditions to reach the moon and for a response to come back. So you'd expect at least 2.5 seconds of delay between NASA ground control's voice speaking and the astronauts speaking. Often in the clips we hear in the media, there is only about half a second of delay between these, sometimes varying as well. Conspiracists pick up on this as proof that there's something dodgy going on and that these transmissions must have been broadcast somewhere on Earth rather than on the moon, as the delays are so short. It's an interesting idea, but as NASA points out, all the original unedited and live at the time recordings of transmissions have the full delay in effect on them.
Attitude is holding very well.
The reason for shorter delays is that in documentaries and other broadcasts, the transmissions are often edited, removing delays from them for ease of listening and time constraint purposes. That's fair enough. With very strict limits on airtime for TV and radio shows, it makes a lot of sense to chop out unnecessary silence, giving us the strange sounding delays that we can hear. Number 3. Environment. More about the environment of the moon now. Conspiracy theorists have noticed a few unusual or unexpected features of the moonwalks that they claim undermine the mission's authenticity. The first of these is quite a famous one, maybe the most famous one. The flag of the USA planted by Buzz Aldrin appears to be rippling in the photos and staying up rather than falling down, suggesting that there's a breeze blowing. Theorists claim that as there is no atmosphere, and therefore no wind at all on the moon, how could the flag appear to ripple and hold itself up? They suggest that it's from fans on a studio set keeping the acting astronauts cool. Again, there's a good explanation. The flag looks rippled because it was folded up during storage. These ripples are simply mistaken for movement. The flag holds its position because of a horizontal bar along the top of it, because otherwise, as theorists suggest, it would fall flat against the pole, and there's not much point having a flag at all if you can't see it. Here are two photographs taken several seconds apart, showing the flag to be in exactly the same position each time, ripples and all. No atmosphere, no wind, no studio set. And you'd have thought that NASA, a multi-billion-dollar corporation with millions of people watching, wouldn't be so stupid as to put great big fans on when they know there's no atmosphere on the moon. Another trickier argument is that the astronauts were filmed on a set and played back in slow motion, or used harnesses in order to make it look like low gravity. This could possibly work if a studio wanted to do that, but NASA states that this wasn't the case for the moon landing. On the Apollo 15 mission, for example, a video was taken showing an astronaut dropping a hammer and a feather at the same time. They both hit the ground simultaneously due to there being no air resistance, which proves he was in a vacuum, as it is on the moon. Theorists counterclaim that the studio set must have had all the air pumped out to simulate the moon's environment. Even if this were possible and true, you can see dust kicked up by the astronauts in videos, and it rises much higher off the ground than it would do on Earth due to the moon's lower gravity. There'd be no way to simulate that on Earth. Number 2. Stanley Kubrick. Probably the biggest overarching explanation of the moon landings by those who believe it was faked is that the whole thing was shot in a secret studio or soundstage with props, simulated moon conditions, and a director. The director that many claim orchestrated the moon landing hoax was Stanley Kubrick. Certainly, Kubrick was a cutting-edge filmmaker back in the time of the landings, and one could definitely see the advantage to NASA asking him to direct a fake moon landing, based on some of his ingenious techniques, in 2001: A Space Odyssey, which was released in 1968, the year before the Apollo 11 mission. A mock documentary from 2002 called Dark Side of the Moon took the Kubrick stance even further, claiming assassinations, involvement of communists, and a fictional Kubrick brother. This fictional documentary likely spurred on conspiracy theories and actually made it more believable to the theorists, even though it was a pretend documentary. In December 2015, a video surfaced allegedly of Stanley Kubrick months before his death in 1999, where he confesses to having directed the Apollo moon landings, giving details about a cover-up and a conspiracy, claiming it was all faked. Although it caused an uproar in 2015 when it was released, the video was quickly debunked as a fake in itself. It wasn't Kubrick, just an actor who looked like him in a dark room. And his wife denied that there was ever an interview like this that took place. Moreover, an unedited version of the interview was leaked, where you can hear the interviewer calling the actor Tom and giving him direction on how to tell the story.
That's all, Tom, I'm just giving you a direction.
You want me
everything about it, I walked in and he said
this. As him, or do you want
you don't have to imitate him, but you have to say, he says, Stanley, we've worked on this moon program. You're not saying what he said, you're not reporting it.
Even without Stanley Kubrick, some people still believe that the soundstage explanation is true though, as they claim it's more believable that everything was broadcast from a studio than from hundreds of thousands of miles away from Earth. NASA keeps giving explanations in response to these specific claims. Number 1. Technology. Probably the best argument to date for the moon landings being faked is that the technology to put man on the moon simply did not exist in 1969 and through the early 70s. Conspiracy theorists who claim this cite both the space race and Cold War tensions as major factors driving NASA to create an elaborate hoax. The USA wanted to win the space race, as did the USSR, the USA's main Cold War enemy. In the early stages of the space race, the Soviet Union was actually in the lead, putting an artificial satellite, Sputnik, into space first, launching the first successful lunar probes, and putting the first man in space, the famous Yuri Gagarin. The USA trailed behind all these achievements, reacting to each one with their own version at a time later. So the fact that the major goal of the space race, that was putting a man on the moon, was won comfortably by the USA after their early defeats, is what conspiracy theorists raise their eyebrows at. They claim that if the USSR didn't have the technology to land a man on the moon in 1969, then there's no way the supposedly less prepared USA should have been able to, and they say that a hoax was formed to fake the win. It's a fair argument, I guess, but interestingly, the USA matched each of the Soviets' achievements only months, and sometimes even weeks afterwards, so they were never too far behind anyway. Indeed, the USA even beat the USSR at other achievements, such as the first space rendezvous in the mid-1960s. By the time of Apollo 11, the first moonwalk, the USA had multiple times as many spaceflight hours as the USSR, which suggests a greater proficiency in the space race leading up to the moon landings. And that's it from All Top 5s for this week. Of course, conspiracy theorists tend to ignore the answers given by NASA, claiming that they're just lies and made-up science, and that images and recordings must have been doctored. It's a never-ending debate, and one that seems to be fought hard by both sides, that unfortunately will likely never end. Be sure to check my video next week on the same topic, but from a different angle: top 5 reasons that mankind landed on the moon. I understand this is an area of quite passionate argument, so do be considerate and polite in the comments and understand that everyone has their own opinions and beliefs. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up because it really does help me out. You can have a look around my channel or just click on the related videos to see any others. I do loads of different topics. Moreover, you can subscribe for a new video every single Tuesday. So peace and love to each and every one of you, and I'll see you all next time on All Top 5s.